Hello. You're watching What Wize Women Want on CPA TV, Charlottesville's Comcast Channel 13. And what we do is every week we have special guests, all females, who are going to be talking about topics that we hope you will enjoy. You can visit many of those shows on www.whatwizewomenwant, and Wize is spelled with a Z.com, for previous shows, and or on YouTube at our personal channel. Today we're going to be talking about raising special children. And we have a panel of mothers today. And I'm going to introduce them, and they're going to tell you a little bit about their children before we get into various topics. Each one of their children has special needs. So first, we have Amy O'Brien, and next to her is Kathleen Vogel, and next to her is, and I heard
Lelia.
you saying it, I know, I wanted to say Delia, but it's Lelia Winget-Hernandez.
It's a mouthful.
I know. And so, ladies, if you would just start and tell us just a little bit about your child, and it will also help to tell people whether you're married or whether you're single, because I think that helps as well. So, Lelia, will you start, please?
Sure. So I am married, and my husband, Michael, is not my children's biological father, but he's been a wonderful stepfather to my children, and particularly to my daughter who has special needs. Her name is Madeleine, and she's 18. And she has, I guess her clearest diagnosis is ADHD, but that really doesn't have any, she's not, it's the inattentive type, so she's not hyper, she's not a typical ADHD child. She has developmental disability and processing delays. She presents like she's on the spectrum, but she's not on the spectrum. So she's emotionally immature, very literal, but also extremely wise and perceptive. And she has some very unique traits, like with pattern recognition and things like that I call her superpowers. I also think she has superpowers about people. She has this amazing perception about people. And she has been described by other people, and we agree, that as the kindest person they've ever known. So she's just a blessing in our lives, and she's a 10th grader at Louisa County High School. If I didn't say it already, she's 18.
Yes, excellent. Kathleen, tell us a little bit about your children.
So I have two children with special needs. The oldest one is 29, and her name is Lelia Vogel. And she is diagnosed with Down syndrome. So that was a genetic disability. So with that child, we kind of knew what to expect. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of understanding about what to expect when you have a child with Down syndrome. But then, 2.5 years later, we had another child, and the genetics said everything was fine. But something was just a little off. And eventually, our son Mitchell, who's now 27, was diagnosed to be on the spectrum. And he has a learning disability. And then later, he was diagnosed with ADHD. So he's living independently now. He has his own apartment. He's got a full-time job. He is doing really well. I mean, we're so proud of all the things he's done, but some things have been monumental in getting there.
And you are married?
Yes, I am married to
Okay.
the same person, because we made this understanding that if anyone left, they had to take all the children. So we're going to tough it out.
And they're not, those two are not your only children. You have others as well.
Yes,
so.
there's 3 extras.
Okay. Amy?
I am very proud to be mother of a 16-year-old. Her name is Erin. She was born a micro-preemie. She was born at 27 weeks, and she weighed 17 ounces at birth.
Wow. Wow.
So growing, watching her grow, I was the oldest child, so I had watched my brothers grow up, and watching her grow, I knew that there was something different, but being warned and told about look for developmental delays in an extremely premature child, I just kind of excused a lot of the differences that I saw as, oh, she'll catch up. And then once she got to be about 4, 5 years old, I started realizing that this was not developmental delays. One of my brothers was a premature baby, and I saw a few developmental delays in him, but he eventually caught up and was right on track with the other children by the time he was 5 years old. And I could tell that there was something drastically different with Erin. And so she was diagnosed at 5 years old with classic autism.
And you are a single mom.
I am a single parent, yes.
So, so all of you have had different kinds of experiences with, and support systems and things of that nature with your children. And so, we were talking earlier before we got on the air about all different kinds of things. And so, in terms of developmental delays, let's say, when, how do you know the difference? Like, what was it about your child that you knew, and how early was it that you had some inkling that this was not developmental delays, it was something else?
It took a long time. I mean, I think, Madeleine is not typical autistic, and she had, we were talking about this a little bit too, I had a high-risk pregnancy, and which I had a very serious bleed at 13 weeks, and then they said that my placenta had torn, so I had a blood clot in my uterus, and they, I had a slow bleed that they couldn't fix, and so they said, she looks fine, but at any moment you could lose the pregnancy, and so that was very scary. And when she was born, everything seemed fine, but then the first thing was she had hip dysplasia, so she was in a brace for about 4 months, from 4 weeks until I'm terrible with math, but 5 or 6 months, and then her eyes were crossing, so she had strabismus, so she had to have eye surgery at 2 years old, and so with the brace and everything, she wasn't crawling. She never crawled. She scooted, and she didn't walk on time. She didn't talk on time, but I just sort of thought, well, I thought the brace was the reason why she wasn't walking on time. The talking, I just thought she was her own unique little creature, which she is. And with the eyes, it's just something that happened. We had the surgery, we thought, but it was just, she was really having difficulty with, everything, with speech and with physical things. She wasn't in school yet, but we did go to Children's Hospital and try to get some early interventions, but I really, truly don't think that I fully understood sort of or her father, I think Michael came in when we were starting to have a much better understanding, my husband, but of all of the implications of what was going on with her, because she has a learning disability, and she has a developmental disability, and she has this other thing going on that nobody can really put their finger on, until she was probably 10 or 11 years old. Wow. And there was a lot of denial, frankly, about it too, with my ex-husband and myself in different ways. Just thinking, well, she's a little behind, she'll catch up. He was more of like, we just need to find a pill to give her that'll fix her.
The magic solution pill. Yes.
So it really took a long time, and it took a lot of just sort of sticking with trying a lot of different things to find what might help her.
So it sounds like you spent a lot of time trying to figure out with different practitioners and all kinds of things like that. So with Carly, it was kind of obvious with Down syndrome, but with Mitch, how long did it take you to recognize?
Well, he was about 18 months, and my husband was just deployed in the military, and so there was a lot of turmoil in the house. So we just kept thinking, oh, he's not talking, and everyone was like, well, he's got 3 older sisters. He doesn't need to. They do all the talking for him.
Right.
And so there were all these excuses as to why he was just a little behind. But finally, at about 18 months, he went silent, completely silent.
Really?
And he didn't speak again. And then he started.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because he's making up for it now.
And then, yeah, that's for sure. And then after he went silent, he came back very slowly with some words, but then he began shutting down completely. And literally, if life got overwhelming, he would go somewhere quiet, and it looked like he was asleep, but he couldn't rouse him.
So, I know you probably spent a lot of time going to practitioners and things because, she was premature. But,
Yes.
I mean, what was it like going through, not knowing? And, I mean, were you constantly some of the children that I get, for people who don't know, I work with autistic adults for the most part, and autistic children as well, helping them with skills and independent living and placing them in school environments and things of that nature. And sometimes I get, when I get them at 25, 30 years old, 40 years old, I get a stack of papers from physicians and psychiatrists and psychologists and things like that. Did you also look for solutions to many different kinds of practitioners? And what kinds did you go to?
From the beginning, for Erin, she went to, she had a lot of medical issues, being so premature and being on oscillator and then nasal cannula oxygen for so long. She developed bronchopulmonary dysplasia, which requires a lot of medical attention. It necessitates seeing a pediatric pulmonologist. And then as part of just all-around care for a premature baby, you do see a developmentalist, you see pediatricians. And so a lot of them were not answering the questions that I had. Okay, I understand she was premature. I understand all of that, but there's something slightly different about her. In the newborn intensive care unit, she would hold her breath and refuse to breathe if she could not lay on her stomach and suck her left thumb.
Her way of communication.
And she just would absolutely shut down, even at 1 pound, if she could not lay on her stomach and suck her left thumb. She'd try to turn her head, because at that stage, still being not supposed to be born, they're still basically fetal at this stage. Their skull is still malleable, and laying on one side too long can cause it to go completely flat. And cause a crick in her neck. So they're constantly trying to rotate, and she would get absolutely livid in her own little way if she couldn't lay on her favorite side, suck her favorite thumb. And I said, that is not just developmental delay behavior, and that's not she's stubborn because she's Irish. That is something completely different. And they said, oh, give it time. Oh, she's just a fighter. Oh, and I didn't feel like my questions were answered until she received a diagnosis.
So I hear this a lot, that the mothers have the instinct to know there's something going on here, and constantly go to practitioners of all different kinds, and just aren't being heard. So I have a feeling that your husband's a doctor. So did you have that problem with him as a physician?
I don't go to the doctor very often, and I don't take my kids unless they're nearly dead. So I was not overly looking for, I wasn't looking for a problem. I was looking for solutions.
Right.
And the doctors weren't the way I thought to get solutions.
Okay. Well, and one of the things that I see a lot in my practice is kids who are suffering from medical PTSD, from all the things. I've had kids who have had brain surgery, autistics who have had brain surgery to cure their autism, or have gone through, a slew of medications, or they're with a psychiatrist, they're with a psychologist, they're with a pediatrician, they're with, a slew of all kinds of people who, by the way, don't talk to each other. And so, I wondered how you were able to cope with, being able to talk to, having all these people, knowing that there was something you wanted to resolve and find solutions, and not being able to be heard.
There's a couple things. One, there was conflict between my ex-husband and I about Madeleine. He was really looking for, and I hear what you say about looking for a solution. I think that's different than looking for a way to fix the child, to make the child normal. And I was saying, she's Madeleine. She's exactly who she's supposed to be. We need to support her. We need to, figure out what it is that will help her succeed, but we don't need to fix her. And that was a conflict that we were having a great deal. So, he was sort of more on the line of, she needs I mean, she did have speech therapy and occupational therapy, but he would have had her therapy, in therapy 5 days a week and on 2 medications or 3 medications.
Right.
And I'm like, she needs to be a child. She needs to play.
Right,
She
right,
needs
right.
to.
Yes.
So there was that. I have binders. I'm a lawyer, so I love binders, and so I have binders on
With lots
Madeleine.
of dividers.
Of course, and properly labeled and all that. So I have binders on Madeleine. When I went for my first IEP meeting, when we moved here to Louisa, and they were saying, well, we don't know if, I said, we're going to, we'll have a meeting and we'll decide what she needs. And they're like, well, we don't even know if she qualifies for an IEP. And I was like, oh, okay. And I pulled out my 4-inch binder and I'm like, I'm not worried about that, but that's fine. We can have that. And, of course she does. But the other thing is that you get competing opinions. So each person that you're seeing has their goal for Madeleine. Speech therapist says she needs to do this. Developmental pediatrician says this is the most important thing. Writing teacher maybe says that. And they're not in agreement with each other. So as a mother, you're trying to decide, well, what is the most important thing?
Right.
And they're mad at you because you're not doing the thing that they think is most important, which is a very, can make you feel really, because you really are struggling to try to find the right thing for your daughter. And I will say, or your child, if you have a partner that is also fighting you, it's very, very difficult. Who's telling you you're not doing enough, or you're not doing what you're supposed to do, or you're preventing her from having something that she needs. So I don't know, I would imagine that, if you have a child with special needs, that also having some sort of conflict in your marriage is probably fairly common, because it's just very difficult. So anyway, I did, and it took me a long time to find people that would listen, that I trusted, and then to just get confident enough of myself to say, no, I'm her mother. I see all of these different points of views, and this is the thing that I think is best for her. And just standing and having to hear people say, well, you're limiting her, or you're overprotective, or you're not doing what you need. And I just have to say, well, I'm her mother, and I'm just trying to do the best I can, and I disagree with you. That is really hard.
You
ahead.
got
I'm
it
sorry.
exactly.
Well, I think that's one of the things with special needs children. They can divide a marriage so quickly. They can divide anything. I mean, because at least in the case of the one of my son, he chose me to be his anchor, and he chose me above everyone. So that put me in a very awkward spot with my spouse, because I had to be between my son and my spouse. And I think that it's very frustrating to have a child that demands so much attention. It was frustrating to the other children. So there's so many factors, and sometimes I had to step back and ask somebody, am I doing the right thing for him, or am I doing this for me? Do I want him to be this poster child of success, or do I want him to be him? And I was constantly trying to look within myself to determine what was right, because there were, and it wasn't just from doctors, it was from family members.
Absolutely, and friends, everybody, sure.
Everybody, teachers, there, and it's hard, and I still don't know if, I know I didn't do everything right. But
but you did the best you could.
And
I'm sure you did an amazing job. So.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
The issues with a lot of the parents. I mean, I had one client, he was a 10-year-old, and the parents called me. He had been to 45 different therapists. The father was ready to divorce the mother. The mother had PTSD so bad because he was a headbanger and he screamed all day long. And mother had PTSD so bad she couldn't drive. And the younger siblings all had PTSD from all the screaming in the house. And so, there's a desperation, that often comes with having a special child when you can't figure out. And both parents decided to have at-home jobs so that they could be there all the time for these children, not knowing what to do and searching all over the place to try and find solutions. So, and I hear the story over and over and over again. People keep telling me, nobody's listening to me. They won't hear what I have to say. Then, the pressure from family all over the place. So how did you finally find the resources that you needed? I mean, did you just become self-contained, or did you, reach out and, find resources in the community or elsewhere?
For me, I had tried so hard to just find somebody who would tell me the answer to my question, and nobody ever listened to my question. It was very simple. What is this called? I didn't say there was anything wrong with her. I didn't want it to be fixed. She's Erin. She is absolutely delightful. She's lovely. She's the most gentle human being you'll ever meet. I just want to know, what is this called, so that I can appropriately address it. I'm not looking for a medical fix. I don't want her on any medications. I just want to know, what is this called? And it was so difficult to get someone to listen. And so when I finally took her to a developmentalist who said, yes, this is classic autism, my only real resource at that point was the school system. She was getting ready to start of kindergarten age. So taking her to the school psychologist spoke with her, met with me, really paid attention, and she was wonderful. And she said, yes, this is autism. This is completely doable. And I do feel that functional independence is a completely reasonable goal.
Absolutely.
And you have been a fantastic mother. And I cried in the middle of the schoolroom, because that's the first time anybody had ever said that to me, who listened to me. And so knowing that she had something with a name and I had a way to address it made all of the difference in the world.
Did she get some kind of testing? Or was it just visual behavior, or what was it?
From the developmentalist, it was a lot of just visual behavior monitoring.
Yeah, because there is no test for autism.
There's no test for it, but just
Technically.
watching how she played and how she interacted with me. And, Kathleen was saying that her son chose her to be his anchor. My daughter chose me. So we have, and still have, a very close, very tight bond. And so even watching how she interacted with her most safe person, he still could see the tendencies that spoke of autism.
Well, you were on a military base, weren't you?
Yes.
And how did you find support there?
Oh, we didn't have any trouble. I mean, the supports were for, we had just done it with Carly. So it was speech delay, so that they give you speech therapy.
So did they go to a school on the base? Or
No, they came.
Public
they
school?
actually. Mitchell went to a preschool, half day preschool when we moved to New York. When we got out of the military and moved to New York. When we were in the military, we didn't get anything for him. Actually, he was diagnosed kind of there, but not diagnosed. We were treating some of the
Symptoms.
Yes, the delays and those types of things. But it wasn't until we moved to New York that he started half-day preschool for children with delays and needs, to get them prepared for kindergarten.
So you've had a good experience with schools. Have you all had good experiences with schools?
I have to say that, I have. Madeleine was at Chesterfield, and they did everything.
These are private schools?
No, Chesterfield was a public school.
Okay.
She was and then she's at Louisa now. So she did have a private school, and my mother was a librarian at a public school for 35 years. I said my children would never go to private school, but Madeleine did go for a little while. But at any rate, she was in Chesterfield, and I have to say that they did everything for her and more. And she always seemed to find someone each year who was really would kind of take to her and really be really. But they told me when she was getting ready to go, but she kept going, getting further behind. I had one of the teaching assistants who was a reading specialist who she'd really taken to, tutoring her during the school year, during the summer. She just kept getting behind. And they told me, when she goes to middle school, they said she has a great self-worth right now. She's got a really good, if she goes the way it is now, going into middle school, it's likely that she's going to be bullied even more, and that it could really hurt her. So I started looking for a different solution, and that's how I found the Oakland School, which is in Fluvanna, and was a wonderful place for her for 5 years. It was transformative for her. But I found that just sort of looking for a different option for summer camp, I've got to do something more, and I found it, and we were able to get her there. And she was there, and then she was homeschooled for a couple of years because Louisa wasn't really ready, I don't think. They were very kind, and they wanted to help her, but they did not have what she needed. And to their credit, they reached out to me. I think she'd been homeschooled for 2 years, and they said, we think we have a program for Madeleine, will you come in and talk to us? And I did, and they've been incredible.
That's fantastic.
So she's making straight A's. She's riding transportation back and forth. Michael, my husband, drove her the first semester. He drove her every day 30 minutes to school, waited for her to take her one class, and brought her home every single day. And that gave her the confidence to then go there for the whole day and ride transportation. So she's at Louisa County High School, and they have been absolutely excellent with her. So I've had a good public school experience, and it seems like everybody's been trying to do everything they can, and sometimes even more than they're allowed to. So
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. It's not always the case, though.
I know.
Like I
Yeah.
had clients who had IEPs, and part of the IEP were that they were, because of their behavior issues, would be taken out of class like for 5 minutes in a period. Okay. If you do that for every class, every day, eventually that child gets behind in terms of the curriculum because nobody bothers to take the time to, catch them up. I've also had clients who went into resource rooms with a resource teacher and were pulled out of the classroom for taking tests and things like that. And I observed resource teachers giving them answers, to the tests because they were not caught up with the curriculum enough to be able to do it. And then come to me and want to, had never taken really a test in their life and want to go get a driver's license, and I have to teach them how to take tests. So there's all kinds of, there's good and it's really, I think, the parents who are really there for their kids, because I've been to meetings where, you go in, and not even an IEP meeting, but just a consultation meeting for a behavior issue or something, and it's the principal, the vice principal, the guidance counselor, the nurse, 5 teachers and ganging up on the parents who are trying to figure things out for themselves and, having all these difficulties at home and really need the support. So it's really nice to hear the educational part of your experiences was really good.
I just wanted to say, again, I'm a lawyer, I think I'm fairly intelligent, but sitting in an IEP meeting, particularly for my daughter with special needs, the lingo is different. Everybody knows what they're saying, and I couldn't understand anything they were saying, and maybe it was because it was stressful, I don't know. But I just want to put a plug in for an IEP consultant or somebody like that to come in who...
Advocate.
Yep. They're not that expensive, and just having her with me even was just such a, it was a stress relief, but she understood the lingo, she knew what they were saying, and very quickly she got us an IEP that I think is serving Madeleine really well.
And I think that's a wonderful, solution, because and parents do call me to come in to, be able to have discussions with it, because a lot of times they don't understand that even if you have a diagnosis of autism, you may have fetal alcohol syndrome, or you may have ADHD, or you may have something else, so it's oftentimes a combination of things. And if you don't know the language, and, if you don't know all the different characteristics of and a lot of times, if you're in a classroom with, 30 kids, it's almost impossible to figure that child out unless you do some kind of in-depth study, which we know teachers don't have the time to do. So also, you all are talking about, all the challenges and things like that as a mother, and literally fighting people, fighting the system, finding solutions and things like that. What did you do for yourself during this time? You've all survived, at least teenage years here. So what have you done for yourself? In the midst of all of this, as I told you, some of the mothers I see are not in very good shape because they don't know, they're so frustrated in terms of taking care of their child, they don't think about taking care of themselves. So what did you do to take care of yourself? Kathleen?
Well, it's really small, but what makes me feel best is being able to have my nails polished. So if you just put polish on my nails and lipstick on me, I'm a happier person. So just doing something simple like that, just getting that hour away, coming back to the house feeling like a person again, and not just the person who is to be takes care of everyone else.
Right.
So something as simple as that, it made a huge difference in my life. And my husband was always very supportive of that. As long as he knew, he could handle whatever was going on. I would give him instructions. You have to get this one there and that one there, and then he would. He's like, "Go, just go. You need time." And so it was really important that he was supportive of it.
Amy, as a single mom, how did you take care of yourself?
I didn't.
And still,
yes,
she's still in school.
She is, and I didn't for a long time, and that was something that I've been very blessed to have probably the greatest best friend ever. And she lives in a different state, and we've talked on the phone probably every day for 17 years. And she basically told me one day in her own way, you cannot pour from an empty cup. Mm-hmm. And when you are giving to someone from what you do not have, you're allowing them to steal from you. Yep. And stop doing this to yourself, because you're going to burn out, and Aaron needs you desperately. So it was through just kind of relearning that taking care of yourself is not selfishness. There is a massive difference between self-centeredness and selfishness and having to be the star of every show and self-care. There was a huge, and I know that's a big buzzword right now, self-care, but it really is a real concept. And so for me, being single and not being able to really rely on a regular
You don't have a family.
schedule.
You don't have a family that supports you here.
Not
Locally.
not locally, not a large family. I mean, I know I can occasionally call on a few people, but I don't have a really large, wide net of people, particularly those who understand autism. And so I actually just took up dancing. And I was able to, go. It was late in the evening, and there was a girl that we knew who lived nearby, a high school girl who was several years older than Erin, who would come over and do her homework while Erin was in the bed. And I became a salsa dancer.
Great.
And that was how I got out of the house and got some physical activity and was able to have a human adult connection and just be Amy for the day, for the evening, and not Erin's mom.
Wow, and dancing is fantastic.
It is.
Lelia, what have you done for yourself?
So yoga and meditation, working out, that kind of thing. And just, I think what you're saying is so important, that, you knowing that taking care of yourself actually is taking care of your child, because you are the most important person in their life. If you burn out, if you get sick, if you're not there, that is the worst thing for them. Therefore, you taking care of yourself is taking care of them. And that's something I have to tell myself all the time. But yoga, meditation, and I working out some sort of just time to kind of just get some physical activity, but also just to kind of get peaceful and quiet and not have someone pulling on me or asking me for something or something like that.
So, when it comes to special needs kids, I don't know about you, but I thought into the future, okay, is my child going to be able to be independent? What's going to happen to them when I'm not around? How can I prepare for the future? That kind of thing. What have you thought about in terms of, for example, Carly, who has Down syndrome, and you said Mitch is already living in an apartment by himself and has a job and is basically independent. But have you thought about, what lies ahead in the event that something happens to you and your husband? Have you made preparations?
Yes, we have a living trust, and when we die, there'll be a special needs trust that develops for Carly. But we didn't include Mitchell on that. Mm-hmm. But like I said, we have 3 other children, and we have stressed that we're a family and that we always stick together and help one another the best we can. So I'm fortunate in that all my children feel strongly that the family is important, that we do take care of one another. So I'm hoping that I live a long time, but in the event that we don't, the other children, I think, will step in and do whatever's necessary.
Well, I hope you don't mind, but I was waiting for you to kind of tell people how you do that. And you have every Monday night, 4 generations gets together for dinner for hamburger night every single Monday night without fail. And boyfriends and girlfriends and, and I feel like you have created that support system just by, just doing that little protocol every single week by having the family get together. And a lot of the family lives locally, but even when they come in for, holidays and things like that, everybody gets together and is supportive of each other. And it's something that I think a lot of families don't, especially families with special needs kids, don't have that kind of support system. But you have, I wanted to give you credit because you have created that in your realm for your, 2 special needs kids. You have created that over and over and over again for them. And I just wanted to acknowledge you for that, because I think it's one of the most special things, that your family does for, it's not just for the current moment, but for long-term, they all get along together, they all love each other, they all support each other, and you've created that in your family.
Well, one of the things about that is that even when we don't feel like doing it, we do it.
Right.
And so we've learned to, like, oh yeah, I'm really not that pleased with this person right now, but I'm going to sit down and, well, Mitchell makes the burgers now, so he's going to make the burger, and that person has the opportunity to say, oh, my burger's done really well, Mitchell. So it kind of gives that ice-breaking time where when you have differences, you can either move away or you can try to move back. And forcing people back together, I'm hoping that they come back together instead of choosing to move apart.
And by the way, everybody, they do not have an ideal family. They do argue, they fight, and all of that kind of thing. But they still
Epically.
It's a commitment, to be there every single Monday, no matter what, and who's arguing or fighting with each other. So, what have you?
Well, I've got the same kind of situation with a trust and a special needs trust. And just to say, I don't know, if I wasn't a lawyer and a mom with a child with special needs, I'm not sure I would know why a special needs trust is important. And it's important because if your child is receiving benefits, if they're a Medicaid recipient or they receive disability, if they were just to inherit money from you or from anyone, the grandparents need to get on board with this too. They will be ineligible for whatever period of time. And so it's always important when you have minor kids to plan, but when you have a special needs child, it's even more important because they could lose that support that's really vital to them being independent and to having all those. So I do have that, but I also have a friend, a really close best friend who was there when Madeleine was born, who is a licensed clinical social worker and has a lot of, has just known Madeleine from birth and is very close to her. And so I know that she could step in. And of course, Madeleine has a big brother who I always say he's conventionally gifted. Madeleine is unconventionally gifted. He's been stepping up probably more than he should have had to. I think that was another thing we had to learn, that we were asking him to suck it up way more than we should have from the time he was very small. But we've kind of talked through that and worked through that. And he knows that he's the person eventually that's going to be looking out for her. And he's a trustee. We're co-trustees with her trust. And he's already starting to be involved in some of those decisions, and he's in college right now, so I would never want, if something happened to Michael and I wouldn't want him to take on that responsibility right now. My friend would do it, and her children have known Madeleine since birth, and I think it would be a good situation. But Zach knows that he's the person. We don't know how independent she will be. We hope she'll be very independent, but I think she'll always need someone looking out for her.
Right.
And fortunately for us, her brother is willing to step up in that way, and he's been doing. For a long time he was angry. For a long time he was kind of in his dad's court of like, let's just fix her. Madeleine, why can't you just do it? You could do, and now he understands she wants to do it, and she's trying to do it, and she's trying to be her best. So he's really come so far in the last few years. But it's also been me coming and saying, Zach, I'm sorry. I wasn't acknowledging the fact that I was asking you to do so much and sort of sacrifice so much. I just expected you to do it. We were all doing it. And that's not really fair because you're a kid. And I should have at least acknowledged.
Yeah. And Lelia is, by the way, doing trusts for special needs kids, just to kind of give her a little plug about that. I try to send everybody her way.
Thank you.
Because she's so knowledgeable about doing trusts for special needs kids. But you brought up an interesting point, and unfortunately Erin doesn't have any siblings, but one of the things that I've discovered over the years in working with special needs kids is how the siblings resent all the attention that goes and often doesn't get resolved even through adult years. So how do you help the other siblings deal with having to focus all of your attention you're literally having to do that because you don't have the resources, you don't have the answers, you don't have all those things. How do you help with the other siblings in terms of helping them work through their own personal issues with not getting mom's attention 100% like they could have?
Well, my oldest child had a very well-developed ego. And she saw it as opportunity to kind of be herself because mom wasn't watching as closely. And thankfully she stayed on a good track. Because the truth of the matter was I was no longer watching the older ones as closely as I was, and I did expect more from them. And the second one, I think she felt that more. She felt like she was gypped because when she needed something, it came second until if the other ones that had special needs needed something, she was pushed to the side first. And it did. I think it affected her much more. Impact was greater on her than the other one. And then the last one was so many years later that I joke that was God's gift for not having killed the first 4. He rewarded us with another child at some point.
Well, remember that 10-year-old I was telling you about with the younger siblings? Once I helped him and got him into school, stopped screaming and stopped banging his head and got him into school, all the 3 of the younger siblings decided that they would start screaming and banging their heads because now it's time for us to get attention. He got all the attention all those for 10 years. Now it's time for us to get attention. So we had to rework, their behaviors as well. And that often happens, You finally have resolution with one of them with the behaviors, and all of a sudden the other ones are like, "What? Hey, woohoo! I'm here too now."
But what Layla said is true. I had to go to them as older children and apologize, and I did it from my heart.
I think that's the thing that I was going to say. I mean, therapy helps, but when you're in it, I think when the children are young, especially when you don't know what's going on, you're just so like, look, you just need to wait because I have to deal with this, and you're not even acknowledging. And so therapy for him, and therapy for me too, but just really they just want to be heard and acknowledged. And that went, and also involving Zach more in Madeleine's, what did the diagnose, here's what the doctor said, this is real. This is not her trying to get attention or her being a pain in the butt or whatever. And so as he started to understand that it was real and that it was not her making things up, combined with me saying, I'm so sorry, I acknowledge what you've given up and what you've had to sacrifice, and we're grateful and we love you, and and that made a huge difference. So maturity helps too.
Right.
But I think you have to apologize and acknowledge the hurt.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So what are the unexpected rewards of having a special needs child?
She's my only one, so I don't have any neurotypical siblings of hers, other children to compare it to. But I have thoroughly enjoyed every stage of Erin's life, helping her through her challenges and just watching the extremely close relationship that has developed between the 2 of us. And now we were talking at one point about Valentine's Day. Something came up and she said, "Well, I don't have a boyfriend, but I have you." And I thought that was so touching for a high school girl to say that to her mother, just to say, I love you, Mom, and I'm okay that I don't have a boyfriend. And just that she was that open and honest to be able to talk to me that way. And just watching how she interacts with other people, and that she is incredibly gentle and very empathetic, and she understands every babble that a baby says. We call her the baby whisperer because she's so in tune with other people, even those who can't communicate well. And it's been a real blessing just having her, and I wouldn't change anything about her. She's absolutely perfect to me just the way that she is.
She is a joy.
She is, and I wouldn't trade anything.
For me, I like to be in control of everything and make sure that I have everything in mind. So, that being said, I think that the biggest reward has been seeing the good in humanity and seeing how many people have been so kind to there's been bullying, there's been issues of unkindness, but the rewards of people being kind to my children that didn't have any stake. There was no reason, there was no reward that they were going to get. And there was just sometimes, there have been examples of extreme kindness and generosity towards them.
Madeleine's just taught me so much. I mean, like I said, she's very wise and very kind. So, and I would say to her when she was younger, because when she was still in public school, she was getting bullied a lot. And she has this gift of walking into a room and noticing the one thing that nobody else notices. And I told her, that is a gift, but unfortunately, right now, and if you're sitting in a classroom in public school in second grade, that's not something that's really going to be celebrated. Everybody needs to be on the same page. So she helps me see the world in a different way, and just her kindness to me and to others. And sometimes she'll say something just because she is so literal, but she's always paying attention. We'll be having a family talk, and she'll just say something that's just so incredibly wise. It just kind of, we all stop and we're like, wow.
Right.
And so she's taught me so much. But she also, with this perception with people, I mean, I've really started to recognize the power of it. And I'm really like, Madeleine, is this person okay? Is this, should we go this route? What's your gut feeling on this? Because it's very powerful. And I mean, I had someone working with me that we ended up, it was a very long turmoil, but we let this person go. And Madeleine said, well, I knew that wasn't going to work out. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? And so now I've been more careful to be like, how do you feel about this? Because she has this very, very keen sense about people.
And that is a very good word to use, is wise. And
Right.
I have found that that's almost the blessed trade-off
Yep.
of having this special need or being on the autistic spectrum, is the intense wisdom that an average 16-year-old girl is not going to have. The incredibly deep insight that I have seen come from this child has been absolutely a joy. I mean, she brings me to tears sometimes. And also we absolutely crack each other up every day. I mean, there's a belly laugh a day because she's hilarious and she thinks I'm hilarious and we crack each other up. But there are those very touching moments when we have very deep conversations over dinner, and she's just so wise, and it's just it's
And see,
amazing.
One of the things I was going to talk to you about is a lot of people say that autism, especially, that people who are on the spectrum don't feel. They don't have empathy. They don't feel. And in fact, it's just the opposite. They feel deeply. They're very sensitive. Their sensitivities are heightened because of the way their brain fires all the time. And so with that, you keep saying the same thing over and over again. So I want to talk about this. What do you do? Because I have yet to meet a client who has not been bullied. What do you do? Because I'm sure there are many parents out there, special needs or not, who have kids who have been bullied. What have you done, in order to be able to help your child when that happens?
So it was happening a lot when she was in public school, still in elementary school, and there wasn't a lot that I could do. I mean, so that was why I was looking for a different solution for her, and she ended up in Oakland, and I was fortunate to be able to have her there, and that was a very safe place for her. There were still kids who were giving her, there was still some of this where you have someone who's very controlling or whatever, but the bullying is really not tolerated. So I was fortunate with that. And she, when she had her older brother with her, when they were still going to school together, he stepped in immediately if he saw anything happening, but that didn't last very long because he was moving quickly ahead and she was, and so we've really tried to role play with her. So when she tells me something that someone has said and I'm wanting her to have a different response, we role play that conversation over and over again. And I will say, my husband and I are both lawyers, so she's living, and my son has been, arguing with me since he could talk. So she has a lot of practice at home with bantering, and she's gotten much better at standing up for herself and saying things. And sometimes it makes my husband and son mad. They're like, hey, she can't say that to me. I'm like, where do you think she learned it? And also, this is a safe place for her to practice that. So the fact that she's doing it, we need to celebrate it and encourage it, because we need her to be doing that when she needs to do it and appropriately, outside. But
that's the key is the appropriateness, because a lot of times they don't have filters.
Right.
And so everything that's on their mind comes right out of their mouth.
Right.
So, appropriateness is also, something that needs to be done. But that's really
role playing.
Exactly. Role playing, communication, but also, listening. Parents just don't listen anymore to their children, whether they're special needs or not. Everybody's on their phones, their gadgets, their technology. I've had parents call me in without special needs kids and say, hey, we're not coming to come and help us. And everybody's sitting at the dinner table with their phones.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so back to bullying. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off the tangent here. So what have you done? I'm sure, especially Carly, because she's obviously special needs.
Carly was never bullied.
Really?
Never bullied.
Wow.
It was an unusual circumstance. She was very subservient to everyone. So she didn't ever challenge anyone. She never tried to be bigger, better, anything. So she was never bullied. And also, I found in the school system that the students would take their cue from the teachers. Mm-hmm. And so if they saw that a teacher was annoyed with somebody, that person would be easier to target. But Carly didn't do that. She with the Down syndrome, she was always pleasing. She was always following. She didn't have as much of her own opinions until she got much older. The maturity caught up. Oh boy, did it catch up. Now she's had too many opinions. But Mitchell, on the other hand, I was always trying to protect because he didn't speak well and he didn't have that same sense. So I kept him in a lot of classrooms that were they were just children with special needs, and I didn't take him out because I didn't want him exposed to that. When he went into high school, I had to put him into more mainstream classes, but that's where he really, really struggled with the bullying the most. And so I tried very hard to keep him in places and that he wouldn't be as bullied, but I couldn't protect him. And he didn't tell me everything that went on. And I don't think I handled it as well as I should have. Although we did do role playing. We tried some of those things. I don't think I did as much as I should have.
Exactly.
You did the very best.
Let's do the guilt factor while we have a few more minutes left. Let's talk about the guilt factor of having a special needs child. How do you feel about, do you suffer from the guilt factor at all?
Yeah. Well, yes. I think...
in what way?
I think being female equals having guilt. I think that just is part of the package. But especially when you have a special needs child. And, in talking about bullying, my daughter has not experienced outright bullying as much as it's been very passive, as in exclusion. So being excluded, having to eat by herself because you can't sit at our table, and it's not so much outright bullying. It's more you don't fit in, subtle. And that makes me feel very guilty because I don't have the tools to help her combat that because. I talk to her and say, if you're ever in imminent danger, here's how you get out of that. Here's how you help yourself. Here's how you speak and self-advocate. But when you can't force yourself on someone's lunch table. And so there's that guilt factor of, okay, now I don't know how to give you the tools. And I've helped you through so much, and this one thing is what I'm really struggling with. And so that's probably the biggest area of guilt for me because otherwise, I didn't allow myself to go down that path and say, I feel guilty because she is this way, because I chose to take her special needs as a celebration of who she is and what she is all about. And so that portion of it, I didn't let myself go down the guilt road.
Okay, so we've got about 60 seconds for each one of you. What would you like to say in summary?
Just always trying to find resources and support. I think talking to other special needs parents has been a huge help. So however you can find those folks to talk to them and just know that we're all in it together, I think that makes a huge difference.
Do you suggest they go online to find support groups?
I found them, when I was at Oakland, obviously there was a group of parents who had that same who had similar issues. But yes, you can go online. There are lots of groups, I think, in this area. The autistic groups, and I even found, Madeleine's not diagnosed autistic, but I found a great community there of people, of resources and people who are willing to help. So, and also just reaching out, you don't have to do it all by yourself. You can get a therapist. You can get Daria's help. You can get an IEP advocate. You can get, folks to help you. Don't think that you have to do it all by yourself.
Kathleen? Few seconds.
Just a few seconds. When you've got the same thing, when you get to the end of your rope, let somebody help.
Okay.
Before you get to the end of your rope.
Before, yeah.
See, I should have known that.
Well, I'm not saying I did it. I'm just saying.
Amy?
Talk. Absolutely talk. When you keep something silent, you give it power. And if you talk, you take away the power of the big elephant in the room. And if you talk to people that are around you, you'll find that you're not alone. You will find that you have a bigger support system than you think you do. And then talk to your children. Don't talk to them through the television, through your phone. There's a lot about body language. If you just look at them with tell me, talk to me. And if the only way your child can communicate with you is under the table, under a blanket, so they don't have to look you in the eye, accept that. Love them where they are and keep talking.
Excellent advice from all of you. Thank you so much. I just realized I neglected to tell everybody who I was. It took till the end of the show. Sorry about that. But you have been watching What Wize Women Want here on CPA TV, Comcast Channel 13. And we have been talking about raising special needs children. I happen to be Dr. Daria Brzezinski. I work with autistic children and adults. And to my left has been Amy O'Brien, and next to her has been Kathleen Vogel. And I
Lelia,
have to,
Winget-Hernandez.
no, I know your name, but Winget-Hernandez always gets me.
Yeah.
So Lelia Winget-Hernandez.
It's a mouthful.
Yes, it is. It absolutely
I'm
is.
sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's okay. So you can watch this show. It will be 4 times during the week on Channel 13. And you can look it up on the CPA website, or you can go to What Wize Women Want, and Wize is spelled with a Z, and www.whatwizewomenwant.com, and you can see both this program and many of the other programs, or you can go to our YouTube channel. And if you put my name into YouTube, Daria Brzezinski, the YouTube channel will come up. It not only has all of our television shows, but it also has my radio shows as well. And most of those shows are all about the educational system, all the radio shows. We thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll be back again next week, because we always have very interesting topics to talk about. And if you missed it this time, you're welcome to join us at YouTube or CPA TV during the week. Thank you so much, and have a good day.